Welcome back to Anime Lockdown. I'm proud to present Lynzee Loveridge of Anime News Network. Thank you for joining us.
Everybody, thanks for coming to my first solo panel ever. This is, please be patient with me. I haven't really done this before, but I've prepared what I hope is a fun presentation for you guys about covering fandom, and I'll include some tips for writing as well as for covering those really hot topics that tend to come up. It's what I have most of my experience in. If you don't know who I am, that's okay. I'm not famous. I'm Anime News Network's executive editor. And what does that mean? As the executive editor, I oversee Anime News Network's editorial department, which in turn means I sign off on every feature, interview, review, column, and video script that's published on the website. So that's a lot of content that I'm responsible for. I also manage our interest section, which runs the range of really cool merchandise highlights to larger investigative pieces. My first, I guess you would call it baby investigative piece, was published in 2013. And that's when I interviewed 3 foreign animators that were working in Japan. And I talked to them about the working conditions. And working conditions in Japan anime studios has continued to be a really hot topic as far as, we just need to pay those folks more. So that was sort of the start of me really looking into that, and we've continued to cover that topic in particular at Anime News Network ever since. As far as my own journalism experience, I have a bachelor's degree in journalism and mass communications, and I have worked as an active journalist since 2008, where I managed the news section of my college newspaper. So I started where a lot of, beginner journalists start. I worked at my school newspaper, and I just never quit. I have the unique distinction of having worked in absolutely every department at ANN that is frontward facing for content. So I started as an intern and part-time journalist for the newsroom, and I worked there for many, many years. And since then, I started, The List was my first editorial contribution to the website. I wrote that for almost 10 years. And I also did some convention coverage primarily at SakuraCon, since I'm based out of the Pacific Northwest. And when Anime News Network decided that it was going to split the intersection off from news and give it a distinct voice, I was brought in for that along with Bamboo Dong. And we worked that together for a while. And then she went to pursue other career goals because, she's like a doctor of microbiology. She's super cool. So when she left to go do that, I took over Interest full time and was its primary writer. And then I was brought on to assist with editorial under Zach Birchie, while also joining him on Ancast as a co-host. And unfortunately, Zach, who was a very good friend of mine, best friend of mine, passed away last year. And since then, I have taken over editorial, and I still manage Interest and continue to work on new projects for ANN, including The After Show, which is a podcast, but also is live on YouTube on Mondays at 6 p.m. And right now we're covering My Hero Academia. So it's me, Jackie Jing, and the Cartoon Cypher over there on YouTube talking about My Hero Academia. Outside of ANN, I have appeared on NPR, in the Japan Times. I've written for the UK Sight and Sound magazine. I was recently interviewed for the New York Post. That actually just went up yesterday. And I was recently interviewed for Daniel Dockery's upcoming book, Monster Kids, which is due out fall 2022. I'm also a source for Dakimura on Wikipedia. So you can find me on a couple different articles on Wikipedia, but that one's my favorite to stick on my resume. So, before I go to the next slide, we're going to talk about a couple different things during this panel. Now that you kind of have an idea of who I am, I'm going to give some examples of some of my greatest hits, which are going to serve as examples of different types of editorial coverage. And then we're also going to talk about ethics in journalism. Do people still say that anymore? We're going to talk about the difference between a blog post and editorial, how journalism is community service, what to do with those hot takes you've got kicking around in your head, and some tips on how to get a really good interview. So if you're an aspiring writer, you have pitches you want to send, this is all going to be great advice for developing that further. So first, I guess we'll talk about my greatest hits, which I'm going to briefly go over some of the biggest pieces I've written for ANN, primarily as examples of different types of editorial and the challenges that they uniquely bring to journalists. So for editorial, these are, again, four of my big editorial pieces that I've written over the course of my career. There's actually a lot. There's too many for me to go into, that, different emotional stories that have stuck with me over the years. But these are all examples of different types of editorial. So the first one was actually published only a few months ago, and that's Sailor Moon got me into this business, and I'm exhausted. I'm still exhausted. Like, did you see that Netflix put up the ONA version of Crystal, and it's got all the really bad animation in it? Yeah, they're still screwing with that franchise. I'm so upset. So with this one, the thesis is in the title there. But in this case, it's how Sailor Moon as a media property has been underserved in North America. And then it goes step by step through the evidence to support that thesis. I'll talk a little bit more about the editorial writing process in my next slide, but these kind of classic editorials are like op-ed bread and butter. The idea is, do you have an idea? You've formed an opinion, but can you support it? The second one here, discussion of the sociopolitics of Megalobox 2. By the way, I hope everyone watched that. It was one of the best shows from the last season. But this was an interview, actually, that we did with Yo Moriyama, Katsuhiko Manabe, and Kentaku Kojima. And, sorry, I'm trying to scroll a little bit there so you can get the really awesome visual. So the idea behind this interview, and I'll discuss more about interview points later, but this particular example was a success thanks to thoughtful, well-crafted questions and the fact that the subjects were really candid about their opinions. You never really know how forthright your subject is going to be about talking about things, especially controversial topics. But in this case, everyone was really game to share their opinions on things like immigration in Japan. For one, toxic masculinity actually got brought up at one point. So too often you might see interviews where it's obvious the reporter didn't research previously published interviews to see what the subject has already answered. I highly recommend doing that. You want to know what they've already been asked, what information is already available before you walk into an interview. An example, a popular example is don't ask the creator of JoJo's why he looks so young. People have been asking him that for years, like Japanese sources, English sources. Every time you ask him, he's going to tell you the same thing, and that's that he washes his face with Tokyo tap water. But it's a wasted opportunity. That information's already out there. You don't want to waste your interview opportunity asking for information that's already well known. So number 3 here is what we already know about Sarah Zanmai. I don't know how many folks in here watched that. That was one of the latest television anime by Kunihiko Ikuhara, the creator of Revolutionary Girl Utena. So when that came out, there was a lot of trailers that just had sort of mystifying symbolism in it, which is totally par for the course for Ikuhara. So what I did was I took everything we had in the trailer there and broke down what that meant, or what we could the clues that were dropped in the trailer, and backed that up with research. So for research-heavy features, this sort of approach helps. They can give you more historical context of a particular series or explain certain cultural aspects that might be confusing to Western viewers. In this particular case, I got to buy a bunch of books about Japanese ghosts and monsters, and that's win-win for me, because that's sort of my favorite thing. But if you look over the piece itself, it goes over what kappa are and the history of kappa, and kappa in Asakura, which is the setting that the anime takes place, and the otters and things like that. This ended up being way more on the ball than what I expected it to be, because like I said, you never know really what you're getting with Ikuhara, but that was a pretty good example. Now, the last one on here, I've never really talked about to a large extent, but I probably am still going to speak in mostly generalities about it just because of the nature of it. There were sources in this that I still have to keep their identities private, but this is an example of an investigative feature that I did. Probably one of the biggest ones that got the most attention, was later used in a court case for evidence, which was also a first for me. I didn't sign up to work at Anime News Network thinking that my articles would be submitted to a court, but that's what happened. Investigative pieces are, frankly, most people without proper journalism training aren't equipped to handle them. There's also plenty of journalists that would rather never touch one, and I completely understand why. This initial piece took me several months to put together, and that was before wading through tons of legal documents. So this might have been the first one I wrote on the topic, but then once things went to court, I was handed thousands of pages worth of documents that I had to comb through to create sense out of for like lay people who aren't, don't have a bunch of legal knowledge to begin with. Like any investigative piece, this one had the potential to become a fandom culture issue, and it definitely did. In a way, this also highlights how important it is to take a lot of consideration for yourself and your sources when working on something delicate like this. You have to take precautions for yourself. Like journalism isn't, what's a good way to put this? It's not glamorous. It's not supposed to be glamorous. And you will end up in the crossfire of a lot of things just for simply telling the truth. That's what happened to me in this particular case. I don't have any regrets about covering it or publishing it, but it definitely went places I didn't expect it to. So that said, let's go to our next slide, which is what's the difference between a blog post and professional editorial? In short, evidence. Evidence is the difference between a blog post and professional editorial. You can write anything and put it out on the internet for free. In some cases, that also applies to video content. If you've run across what I like to refer to as YouTube shoutmen, folks who put together like 90-minute plus videos revolving or devolving into what amounts to as yellow journalism, tabloid-style pieces aiming to direct harassment at folks on the wrong side of like an anime opinion. People have monetized this and gotten huge followings on YouTube for it, so it definitely works, but it's not journalism, it's crap. It's awful. So the main point of those videos is mostly to cash in for clout, to get those follower numbers up, to get that ad revenue, and it makes it harder to differentiate between quality editorial and some angry guy's rage-induced insecurity. So thanks, guys. Now, when I say evidence, I don't mean you need to like develop a court case level defense of all of your opinions, but you do need to be able to support them with actual facts. So when I published Kanipa Show's piece, Crunchyroll Originals Have Been a Disaster, that was published on June 1st, I believe, or it was within the last month. It was based on actual research. He talked to representatives at Crunchyroll. He hoofed it to their shuttered studio building in Japan. He took statements from previous interviews, all to illustrate his points and why his opinion is valid. So a good editorial utilizes readily available factual information to draw a conclusion. That's the primary difference between a blog post and a professional editorial. Building on that, we're going to talk about, actually it is about ethics in journalism, specifically the SPJ Code of Ethics, which is the most important part of journalism. I recommend going to the Society of Professional Journalists webpage, reading it, downloading the PDF for their Code of Ethics, memorizing it. This should be your Bible if you want to be a journalist. It's the only thing that matters. So to summarize what is in that as briefly as I can within this amount of time, you need to seek and source the truth. Source mean like name people that you have talked to who can go on the record. Your writing shouldn't be a bunch of according to so-and-so with insider information who I can't name. It's okay to have some of that, but if your entire article is built on it, there's no you're not going to earn your readers' trust, really. So it doesn't matter if you know that everyone's telling the truth. You need to have some actual people on the record willing to support it. And you need to provide context, which kind of goes back to those YouTube shoutmen videos I was talking about earlier. Those are usually taking things out of context and then spiraling them into some sort of story that best supports whatever point they already wanted to make. You need to provide context of the reality of the situation, what may have influenced decisions, things like that. And then the reader is supposed to be able to take in that information and draw their own conclusions. And you need to talk to everyone. So a good example of talk to everyone is if you go to Anime News Network right now, there's a story about AnimeTube. That kind of was the thing that blew up over the last couple days. It was a Kickstarter project that right before I got into this panel, I was told it is currently suspended. But it is a Kickstarter that was claiming to be able to get you basically all the anime streaming for free. And they were going to do it, and you only needed to give them about $50,000. And we had an article up that had quite a few quotes. Well, we had an article prepared. It had quite a few quotes from industry folks who were commenting on it on Twitter. But you can't just publish their opinions. Like we had to reach out to the creator of AnimeTube and give him the opportunity to comment on that and take those comments and also put them in the article. You might still think that it's a shady scam, or you might think it's a legitimate service, but regardless, we had to present both people's opinions, especially because he was the subject of the article. Truth to power, what does that mean? Like, you hear that a lot, but what does truth to power mean? Truth to power means that I guess if I use my tattoo as an example, the fourth estate is what journalism is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a watchdog organization that holds those with power accountable to their actions. These are the people who are given responsibility over your money in your government, or are like Jeff Bezos, who has so much money that he can just go into space for vacation. Okay, those are people who have actual power. And those are the people who journalism is supposed to keep an eye on to make sure that they are doing what they say that they're going to do. So minimize, am I allowed to curse during this panel?
Yeah, why not?
Minimize motherfucking harm, guys. Okay? Like, what does that mean? What that means is that there are people that you will encounter even in anime journalism who are in vulnerable positions. They don't have the power that we spoke about earlier. Maybe they are financially compromised for some reason. They're involved in work that doesn't offer them certain protections. Maybe they are children. Maybe they are from a marginalized group. Folks like that, you're supposed to minimize harm to them. And that also includes your sources, the sources that trusted you. You need to protect them. You need to protect them to the point that if you're called into court and asked to identify them, you go to jail instead. That's the level of what is supposed to be expected from a journalist. And there's a reason the standards are high. You don't earn people's trust. You don't earn people's trust if you're willing to throw everything away for clout, connections, and friends. I have people I like in the industry, but if they're someone in a powerful position, or if there's someone who's abusing the powers that they have, that sucks, dude, but we're not friends anymore. I have to do my job. And as a journalist, that's where it is. You get along with people, but you have to realize that at any point you might learn something that you didn't expect to learn, and that you might have to prove that it's true. And then when it is true, publishing it might hurt someone you like's career or things like that. I've done that before, and I'm not sorry. Because journalism is community service. So journalism is community service. You're responsible for your written piece. So once that is published and what the words that you have put down, you're the author of that piece. That was your responsibility to see it through to the end and to make sure that everything in it was accurate and and you told the truth to the absolute best of your ability at the time. If you do that, journalism can improve lives, it can improve working conditions, it can inform, and it can entertain. But entertain is always last on my list. Like, I want you to, sometimes read things and come away thinking like, oh, she's funny and clever, but that's not really my end goal. And you should seek to combat disinformation. So, rumors can spread like wildfire. And we've actually published on ANN a couple of articles in the past that were essentially like saying, no, this viral thing is not actually real. I'm sorry. I wish that, maybe that berserk visual that went viral on Instagram and Twitter was real, but we're not getting more berserk. Sorry, at least not right now. Another one that went kind of crazy was that the Demon Slayer manga sold more than all of American comics combined. Well, no, it sold really, really well. And in fact, manga and graphic novels for young adults are doing really, really well in the American market, more so than some of the, Cape comics that usually dominate. But Demon Slayer itself, it didn't actually sell more than all of American comics combined. An example of a piece I did that, at least in my opinion, improved lives was we published something a couple years back about the director Yagi Numa. He directed an anime called MMO Junkie, and he was also a conspiracy theorist. And by that, I mean, like, he had a lot of really, really nasty things to say about Jewish people. And he was saying them publicly on Twitter, all over the place. And we wrote a piece about it and interviewed folks. And after it was published, he was ousted from the entire industry. If he directs or works anymore, he's doing it under a pseudonym. He also hates me personally, but that's okay. That's kind of what happens sometimes. So next, what do you do with your hot takes though? Like, you've got opinions on like why, I don't know, like Tanjiro is best boy or something. That's not a hot take. Everyone knows that's true. So if you have hot takes, what you should do is you need to write a list, figure out which ones you can argue based on factual evidence, and then pitch them to me. You need to send them to me. We, as in ANN as a whole, will pay you for your editorial work. Everyone who submits features, reviews, any kind of written content on the website is paid. Oh, thank you. I also like my hat. And there's also other great publications that might be interested if your idea isn't based around anime and manga. That is one of the limitations of Anime News Network, is that we're focused primarily on Japanese media, specifically manga, anime, and to some extent video games. So I will drop my email address in the Twitch chat when this is done if you want to send me a pitch. But that's what you should do with your hot takes. Tips for good interviews. This is like one of my favorite parts. Okay, so I mentioned earlier that I discussed some pointers for putting together good interview questions. So consider this sort of like a do's and don'ts if you're planning to interview anyone for anything, but especially like guests at conventions and things like that. This might seem really obvious, but you should familiarize yourself with your subject and their work. Those hot takes that I mentioned earlier, let those help you form your questions. So I'll forever be impressed with a lady that was at a roundtable interview with Reki Kawahara, who's the creator of Sword Art Online. And she asked him about depowering Asuka so that the character had to be regularly rescued from sexual situations in the first anime season. And I was like, whoa, way to just, like go for the throat. That's really cool. And it got a genuine, interesting answer out of Kawahara, who has also since heavily considered how he writes female characters. I'm not saying that, like she put that idea in his head, but he has revisited that and made statements about it since. So every creative gets asked like bargain bin questions like, what inspired you to become a creator? Or who's your favorite character? Don't do that. Those are boring, and they're not going to give you very interesting answers either, because they get asked that all the time. So instead, you want to find questions that really engages with the work itself. When the creator feels like you understand what they made, they'll feel more comfortable like talking the nuts and bolts with you. And that was sort of what my example earlier with Megalobox was like. There's also a level of formality that you'll have to take into account. Like interviews with Japanese staff are often organized through members of the production team, and they may feel beholden to represent the work well and maintain like a position of positive attitude and neutrality when talking about it. So when you ask them questions like, who's your favorite character, you're going to find that actually pretty often the only response you will get is all of them, because they don't feel like they can really like show favoritism necessarily, especially in front of like production committee managers and things like that. You also want to avoid wording questions in a way that can be resolved in a few words, because especially if you're doing it like over email, because a lot of times if you ask them a yes or no question, you're going to get like yes, no, or yes and like 3 more words or something like that. So avoid doing that, especially if you're also not comfortable like pushing the issue further, which can also be difficult if you're doing it over text. Like you get an email back with your answers and then like they're all very short, and then you'd have to email again like saying, hey, can you say more about this? And that's going to be translated and then sent through the production committee to that. And the process can be very long compared to just a general face-to-face interview. So you'll get deeper, like more thoughtful answers if you ask, say, the director of Made in the Abyss, what similarities are there to the Abyss and Japan's idea of hell? And then he's going to have to like give you a more thoughtful answer than if you just asked, which moment made you cry? Because the answer to that is all of them. That anime is suffering, and it's one of my favorites, but it's a lot. So that said, that's actually most of my general presentation. So I would like to open the chat to questions and answers. If you have any specific questions, either about my work, about Anime News Network, about your writing, go ahead and throw those in there. It would be helpful to me if you typed like question in all caps and then followed it with whatever your question is. It'll just make me easier for me to see in the chat. So
I actually have my mods scanning the chat for questions, and they're going to put them in a Google Doc for me, but that would make it easier for us as well.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess I'll take that time to like take some coffee.
Yeah. It'll take a couple seconds before the Twitch chat catches up. So.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Daryl Surratt in the chat.
Yeah.
Hi, Daryl.
He got hit by the auto mod for saying some comment. I don't know what it was. I don't think it was anything bad. I just our bots this year are especially aggressive.
Yeah.
Okay, somebody's copy pasting something into the doc right now, it looks like.
Okay.
Maybe. There we go. They pasted it in white text. I love it. I'll have to get close. Who are some of your favorite folks that you've had a chance to interview?
Oh, okay. The first interview I remember doing that I was sort of like a big check mark off my list was, oh God, now it's going to make me look dumb if I can't recall his name off the top of my head. The creator of the Neon Genesis Evangelion manga. I got to talk to him at Japan Expo USA, which was sort of an offshoot convention that the folks from Japan Expo, which is one of the biggest conventions in Europe, but it specifically is in France. They tried to do like a USA version, and it went for like 2 or 3 years in San Mateo, and it did not work. But he was there for the first one. So, and that interview went really well. I really enjoyed it because he gave me a compliment, which like early in my career, it really stuck with me. He told me, you're very prepared, which was
nice.
Which is like, my whole ethos. Exactly. Like I can't be too nervous if I'm very, very, very prepared. So that was one of my favorite interviews. I've also gotten to interview Gen Urobuchi a few times, and I've gotten to interview Junji Ito a few times. I'm a big fan of Junji Ito. I have an entire shelf over here of just his manga. So those have definitely been like big moments for me in particular. Yes.
Nice. I'm going to stall with one of my questions while they copy paste.
Sure.
I've noticed it's probably been the last couple of weeks, maybe the last few months, you've made a few joking comments on Twitter about certain headlines that are a bit too racy to use. And I'm curious about the process that goes into making these headlines and if that's a limitation, like why that limitation is there to use, say, profanity in a headline, even if you as the editor would like to.
Yes, there have been a couple times where I've wanted to say fuck, but they've told me that I can't say fuck. And that's a publisher. I'm overridden by my publisher on that one, Chris McDonald. And part of that is it's not so much like, oh, you know, you're going to offend a bunch of people. It has to do with like web ad things. Like if you put certain words in there, like ads will get upset. I don't worry about advertising most of the time. Like that's our separation of church and state there. Like I don't want to know anything about who pays for what ever, if I can. But yes, in that particular case, I can't use the F word. It's a tragedy, really.
Are you the person that writes the headlines?
Yes, a lot of the times I do. Well, not for everything, but like most of the times that this has come up, I believe it's been in regards to our column This Week in Anime, which is sort of a chat style column between two people about a particularly new show or movie that is streaming. And like, for instance, one that went up this week was for the Yaoi movie, Twittering Birds Never Fly, or Twittering Birds Can't Fly, something like that. And it's very racy. I got it absolutely got approved for all the screen caps in it, but it does have like an age lock on it. And I did want to call it Twittering Birds Never Fuck, but I was told that I can't do that. So there you go.
Just as long as that column is coming up in conversation, it's a very, to me, I've never seen that format before. It seems very experimental. What went into creating that style of editorial?
Well, that particular column launched before I was with Editorial, and to my knowledge, it was actually primarily the idea between Jacob Chapman, who worked for us at the time, and Zach Birchie. So I remember, I really enjoy it because it is sort of unique to the site for sure. And I remember Zach called it like the parlance of our times or something like that, which it's just, you know, how two people like talking over Twitter DMs or something might discuss anime. Of course, we have, you know, we ask for a little more depth than maybe the typical just like sending someone a text about, well, you need to watch this. It was really cool. But it is a little more informal than a lot of our other stuff.
Okay, we've got tons of questions in the doc now, so.
Oh, great.
I think I know the answer to this one. What is the most hated topic? Is it the Vic topic, or is there one that got more controversial than that?
Oh, okay.
That you've written about.
That I've written about, and when you say hate, you just mean like
I think that's how they're wording it.
People got mad. Yeah, people got mad about it. I think the Vic topic was definitely the big. I mean, that lasted like. There's still remnants of that, like hanging around the internet. So I think that one definitely got a lot of attention, both positive and negative. The Yagi Numa article that I talked about earlier also did, just in that like a lot of Nazis showed up on my Twitter account to like tell me they were gonna, you know, do Nazi things.
Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, I've also gotten hate art. I guess it's the opposite of fan art. Of me drawn and sent to me as well, which is just like, I don't know, another level. Like, I just try to think about it like, I don't know, dude, how long did you just spend doodling me in your notebook?
Jesus, I'm really sorry to hear about that, but you seem to be laughing it off.
Yeah.
What is one of the most intimidating interviews that you've had to conduct?
Intimidating interview. Let's see. I'm trying to think if there have been any interviews like that I've had to do in person where I knew I was going to have to talk about something really uncomfortable. But that hasn't really happened. I haven't had a lot of interviews where I personally felt intimidated. maybe that's weird.
No, I mean, that's good. It shows experience. What are some common mistakes that you see in pitches from new writers?
The most common ones are probably some of the topics that I've touched on earlier, where it seems like it's someone's it's an inflammatory take that doesn't really have a lot of basis in facts to back it up. Usually these will come out of whoever the current villain or something is on Twitter, and then they want to write about it. I have had a couple of pitches that were just a little bit tone deaf, like the person probably didn't think they were at the time, but and I don't want to share a pitch really because we ended up passing on it. But I mean, I've had ones that connect to modern U.S. politics sort of situations that are kind of out there, and I've just turned them down.
Let's see. Since Anime News Network has been covering more legit related matters, what is the policy between reporting on factual matters and legal matters where typically a lawyer would need to be involved to draw a conclusion? Oh, that's a complicated one.
No, but it's good because we have had legal matters show up. I am not a lawyer. I did not go to law school. We have a lawyer that we have reached out to at times to get a third-party opinion on. This is a lawyer that's not involved in whatever the legal situation is. Likewise, we also have a ethics advisor that works with or is on the board for the Society of Professional Journalists that I've reached out to with drafts to make sure there are no ethical concerns. So we do, I feel, take due diligence to make sure that we're not just sort of talking out our ass about more complicated things. It's always recommended in journalism because as a journalist, you kind of become a jack of all trades, master of none sort of thing when you can write about quite a few very broad things. I mean, I've had to look into, for a more innocuous idea, there was a couple years ago, and it recently came back up, discontinuing a certain brand of drawing pencils in Japan that are widely, yes, and they're widely used by animators. I believe it's red and blue. I'd have to double check. And so I didn't know anything about these before I started the article, but by the end of it, you're supposed to have gained quite a bit of knowledge. And if you still have holes in that, you reach out to professionals. You should never be in such a hurry to be first that your reporting is sloppy. So, which can be tempting at times. We have competitors. We want to break the story, but we also want to make sure everything in the story is accurate and has the full context of the professionals it may be affecting.
I've heard that sentiment from Anime News Network before, is that you'd rather be right than first.
Yeah, it was probably Egan that said that. Sounds like Egan.
This is, you touched on this a little bit. So in regards to negative feedback, pushback, and explicit harassment that you could get as a journalist, how do you find it the easiest to deal with that? Maybe easiest is the wrong word. I guess, what do you do to cope? Maybe is also the wrong word.
It's okay. I have not become an alcoholic, which is good. For me, when it comes to harassment, I'm not inundated with it like probably some more prominent folks might be. I'm also very boring on social media, which might be part of the reason. Journalists are supposed to present themselves as neutral, and you should go into these topics assuming you don't know everything yet and not drawing any conclusions until after you found out everything that you can. So what that means is that on social media, I might have some feelings about a particular thing that I'm looking into, but I don't voice those there because it hurts readership, first of all, and it hurts my credibility as well, regardless of how I might have internal feelings. So what I'm saying is I don't particularly get a lot of harassment online, I think, because I'm not particularly inflammatory about things, even if I feel very passionate about them. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, I I guess I just acknowledge that a lot of the harassment comes from burner accounts. These are real people, but they aren't like real people. Because they're hiding behind some kind of like mask of, they're not engaging with me like genuinely. So I would much rather have like a genuine debate or discussion of ideas with someone who feels strongly about something differently than I do. But when it comes to just randos like throwing dumb shit in my mentions, like, who are you?
Yeah. So this is from somebody that writes at self-professed and amateur level.
Okay.
And they're asking for if there's anything specific that you look for in a writing sample that they can apply to their writing that would make them stand out in the crowd when pitching. To you specifically, I think is what they're asking.
Yeah, for me specifically, I mean, I'm always looking for people who can bring a perspective that I don't already have access to. So one example of this is like we published a couple of pieces about anime fandom in other countries. One was in a particular country in Africa. The other one was in Puerto Rico. And I'm always looking for pieces like that. Like if you want to talk to me about what it was like growing up as an anime fan in Malta or something like that, like what was your access to shows on TV? What were your, how did conventions or anime clubs work? Were there any? Like, how far did you have to travel for that? Like, what were the shows that were really popular because those were the dubs that you watched or something? I love that kind of stuff. Like, give me anything that's from a unique perspective that only you can tell me. That kind of stuff gets me really excited.
Nice. So this next one, I guess some of it is maybe not as common now that everything, well, quote unquote, everything is available streaming, but they're asking about the ethics in reporting on something that might not be available legally. And they said also other facets of the anime fandom that might be not legal. I don't know what that could refer to other than pirating. I guess if you're going to review something that doesn't have an official release is I think what they're asking.
Oh, we don't typically publish reviews for things that don't have an official release in that language, in English. I mean, we do have other sites that could have or do have reviews for stuff that's not available in English, but is available in that native language, like French, or for things that may be available. Like I know there's a lot more manga available like in Southeast Asia than there is over here as well. Like, and in France, like their comic industries are much different than ours. So those would be cases where we would publish reviews for those, but we don't and I would be open to publishing features about like the fan sub landscape now that a lot of stuff is available legally streaming. So if like you want to interview a particular fan subgroup and talk to them about how things have changed and stuff, I would publish that as a fandom piece for sure. But you can't like drop links to their downloads or something in it. Yeah.
What is your approach as an editor to handling material provided from multiple writers that are all contributing to the same format? For example, like a review or a preview guide. What do you look to change and what do you look to retain?
Let's see. So our preview guide, which is currently running right now, and I hope everyone's reading it because I haven't had a day off in almost 2 weeks because of it. So please go read preview guide. We've got like 5 reviewers on that. And one of the things that I did make an active effort to do once I took over editorial, and this applies to our daily streaming reviews, preview guide, and our full-length reviews, was bring in new talent. We had gotten down to like maybe about like 4 regulars, and I thought we just needed a larger pool of experience, ideas, and fandom. So, for instance, one of our newer reviewers who works with us now is Mercedes Cluis, and she also works or writes things for Anime Feminist at times. But I wanted to bring her in specifically because she loves idol anime, and we didn't have anybody who liked that. And there's a lot of idol anime that comes out. There's a couple every season or so, and I needed someone who could understand that specifically. And I continue to like look for people who can contribute to particular like insular fandoms that we might not have. We published a piece like about Precure once that started really, well, I mean, like there had been a fandom for Precure, right? But we weren't doing a lot of coverage for it. So I found someone who could write extensively about Precure to like do a feature piece on it. I would, and we have someone like Lauren Orsini is kind of like our Gundam person. But so if you have like a niche even within anime fandom that you feel like you understand, like the 80s mecha and stuff like that, like, and you want to write about like why this particular thing is really cool, more people should check it out, send that to me. That would be something that I would also be interested in. So it's all just about diversifying the content to be more representative of anime fandom as a whole.
Somebody is asking about tips when writing headlines. I imagine that those get very difficult, especially when stories are similar.
So I don't do the headlines for news, and I like puns, and I get to use those a lot for interest in editorial because usually our stuff isn't super duper serious. Some of the features or whatnot are pitched to me with headlines already in mind, and I don't have to write those. My philosophy, I guess, on headlines is you want to balance between something that gives people enough information that they want to know more about it before they click on it. But you shouldn't lean towards sensational just for the sake of being sensational. You still want your headline to be representative of the content within the article itself. So I guess that's my major headline advice.
It's great advice. I'm going to reword this one a little bit because I think there's some obvious answers.
Okay.
When you're getting a pitch, what are some red flags that you're just immediately would throw it out? Maybe not the most obvious ones, but like, I don't know, more uncommon. Because obviously, like if it's full of profanity or lies,
or if it's just like a mean-spirited hit piece. Like,
yeah, but if there's any uncommon red flags that you can think of,
not really. Other than those, because I mean, I'll usually be able to figure it out after looking at the writing examples itself. I guess one of the harder things to like explain is that if it's very surface level, I'm not usually highly motivated to work with it. Like you need to be able to like really have a point of view.
Kind of in the same realm, this is one that I'm just thinking of because this was something that I struggled with in the brief time that I was hiring writers. What do you do to combat plagiarism? Like obviously you have your established writers that you know and you can trust, but if you're getting a new writer, is there a way for you to be able to tell if they're, I guess, just stealing something from somebody?
I haven't actually ever had that happen. And typically the writers that pitch to me, like they have other writing samples so that's, I guess I would say that is what it is. If like someone comes to me and they've never published anything and then they've got a pitch, I mean, you can always like throw something into Google and see if it already comes up. But I haven't typically had people try to bamboozle me with like submitting fake stuff to get paid.
I know that I've seen, I don't know if it was you specifically, but writers for ANN have said that other people have taken their Anime News Network stories and rewritten them.
Oh, yes, it does happen with news far more often. And I guess it has actually happened. Like I haven't had someone pitch me plagiarized content, but we have had our content stolen. I've seen it read, just like someone just read it in a video format on their YouTube channel. But I have also seen like wholesale copy paste on certain blogs. I have not seen that so much with features as we have for like news articles themselves. And fortunately, we've got a couple people on the team who are pretty proactive about sending like, hey, take this down. Otherwise, XYZ. So I've been privy to that happening, but I haven't been like actively involved in like enforcing it.
This is a bit of a longer one. I'm going to parse it a little bit. I think what it comes down to is what is maybe the best way, let's say you're interacting with somebody that is spouting off a bunch of shoutmen-esque type content. Is there a way to, I guess, talk them down? I don't know. Like, is there a way to deal with those people without it just turning into a fight and making them realize that they're not full of it?
It really depends on, I think, the angry person's personality. There are some people I have encountered via social media who are yelling about what they've been told that they need to be yelling about because they watched some kind of content that told them that, I don't know, that Anime News Network's going to take away their anime titties or something like that. And they're all a bunch of like evil SJWs and that kind of rhetoric. There have been a couple of times where I was in a particularly good mood and was like, hey, it's not really like that, buddy. Like, are you okay? Like, this isn't really what's happening. And gotten, through to a point at the end where we were both like, thanks. And things were fine. As for the people who like actively produce that content, I don't engage with them.
Oh yeah,
like
there's no helping that.
There's no help. Well, no, because they're not. In my experience, they're not motivated by disinformation. It's not like they've been told something and accepted it as true when it's not, and it's like offended them in some way. It's more like they know that a bunch of people will accept this as true if they say it on their loud channel, and they're going to make money off of it. They're just disingenuous to begin with, so you can't get anywhere with those kind of people.
I think my favorite fact that I saw was that Mike Toole was the owner of Anime News Network.
Yeah, that was one. Yeah. I love Mike Toole. He's a great guy. He does not own Anime News Network. Sometimes he writes for us. And as far as I understand, like his editor at large title is because of, all the great contributions he's made to our website, but he doesn't oversee like any of our decisions at all. So yeah, that's just, that's another thing that just sort of spun through misinformation on Twitter because they were mad because I think he said something mean about one particular angry YouTube person. He might have called him a Nazi or something like that, and that's what happened.
You probably get this one a lot, but do you have advice for people that are just starting out in anime writing?
Yeah. Keep doing it. Focus on the things that you really like and have like strong opinions about. Keep updating your blog and writing about it. And when you have a piece that you feel particularly polished about, send it to me.
I love it. I think this might be the last one, unless people come up with some more. It's just people asking what your favorite anime conventions are.
Oh, okay. I've been to AX like a few enough times that it is still very exciting to me. Like I know, I have colleagues who have been going forever and it's just sort of like, it's AX, but I still really enjoy Anime Expo. I've always been as press, which might like also skew my opinion somewhat because they're very nice to us press folk. But I always have a great time there, seeing my friends. I haven't been to SakuraCon in a couple years, but I still have like a soft spot for that since it's my home con. And let's see, I've been meaning to check out KomoriCon. I actually know some of the folks that run that one, and they're very nice people, but I just haven't made it out. And I will be at Otakon this year.
Oh, nice.
And so I'm excited to go to that. I haven't been to that since like 2012 or something. So this is opposite coast. So I'm going to be heading out to that, and then I will also be hitting up my first Anime NYC this year, which it's not my first time in New York City, but it's only my second time, and I had a lot of fun in New York City the first time I was there, so I'm looking forward to that as well.
Awesome. I am also going to Otakon and Anime NYC. I'm looking very much forward to it.
All right, we'll have to have some like vaccinated high fives.
So I have a question. I'm going to try to think of the best way to word it because it may sound negative, but I thought this was awesome when it happened. Okay. So the XArm episodic reviews.
Yeah.
It seemed to be a very risky move, and it seemed to show some weakness in the episodic review format. They were very enjoyable to read, But I'm wondering what went into, I guess, publishing that once you started to see like there might not be a lot to talk about in this show.
Yeah, so I guess from an editorial standpoint, oh boy, XArm. We had what I felt was really good coverage of the show as a show, not like a plot, but as like a production from Kaniba show.
Mm-hmm.
He did a really good job on that. I felt also, I mean, I guess if I were to go back, like if the manga ever got released, I'd like to give the manga like legitimate reviews because, you know, that wasn't a trash fire, dumpster fire. But as far as the XArm reviews themselves, that was more, wasn't the first time we've done something kind of like that before. Gabriella Ekins did something similar to that for Pop Teen Epic, which was, you know, like intentionally shitposty.
Sure.
So we decided once XArm got like I think it actually started with Preview Guide. I think Nick's Preview Guide entry for that was tongue-in-cheek. And people responded positively to it there in the forums and was like, well, let's just see how long we can do this. And he had to get creative with it as he went, in the same way that Gabriella had to. Like, I think one of her Pop Team Epic reviews was actually like a video that she recorded like in a library or something like that. So yeah, we just kind of use that show's uniqueness, I guess I'll say, as an opportunity to try something a little eccentric. I would never like make that a regular thing. I don't know that it'll ever happen again. And I certainly am not necessarily looking for another opportunity to do that kind of thing again. But when it came to that particular show, I don't really have regrets about it.
Have you ever, especially with a review like that, have you ever received negative feedback from the creators or the crew of a show?
No.
I guess that's good.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, I imagine there's a possibility that they might have hurt a few people's feelings, I suppose. I know that we do have a sizable amount of Japanese industry folks that do read ANN. I don't know if they read the reviews, but they do read ANN and interact with us sometimes on Twitter. But like, for instance, the chief animation director was very happy with the This Week in Anime column we did about Fairy Ranmaru, for instance, which was sort of like a underappreciated gem of the last season, if I can say that. But the only kind of negative feedback I can recall that we've gotten as far as review or column content has usually been because they were mad we revealed like some spoilers or something like that. And they're like, hey, people aren't going to watch this because you told everyone what happens. And it's like, okay, but so, yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I guess as a final question, probably the most asked is, where did you get that hat?
Oh, this one? So I love hats, and I have a lot of hats. Where did I get this one? This one I might have got at like Forever 21. I also have berets. I have mushroom hats. I have lots of hair things. I like to put things on my head. I don't know. So yeah. Yeah, but this is my wide brim black one. I have a smaller brim black one. I have a similar one like this that's actually a dark navy blue. Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. Did you, I suppose, if you were going to plug anything, it'd probably be Anime News Network. We all know where to find that.
Yeah, you all know where to find me at Anime News Network. But I guess if I was going to plug anything, I would ask people to tune in to the ANN After Show on Mondays, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern on the Anime News Network YouTube channel. We're really putting a lot of effort into growing our YouTube presence as far as like doing video editorials and things like that. So please check it out and subscribe.
Well, thank you. You have a great rest of your day. Cheers.
Yeah, thanks everyone for coming in to my panel and making it a success. I had a great time.
Well, thank you.